This is the Diatone Roma F5. It's a 5-inch bind-and-fly quadcopter from Diatone, and you guys have been begging me to review it. And I can see why. It looks freaking amazing. But here's the thing. In the past, some Diatone products I've reviewed have been awesome. And other Diatone products I've reviewed have looked awesome at first, and then turned out to have some kind of a fatal flaw that meant that I didn't think they were so great after all. So the question we're going to tackle today is, which of those things is the Diatone Roma F5? Is it as good as it looks? I'm Joshua Bardwell, and you're going to learn something today. In just a second, you're going to see my impression of how this quad flies, but the minute I take off, many of you are going to notice that the footage is stabilized. I would never normally show you stabilized footage for a flight test because I would want you to see exactly how the quad flies. This quad ships with a GoPro mount for a Hero 8, not like a Hero 7. So I used my Hero 8 on it, and I forgot. I don't usually fly my Hero 8. I usually use it for handheld stuff, and I forgot that Hypersmooth is on. So I'm not going to throw all this footage out because I want you guys to get my honest impressions of the very first time I flew it, because I think those are really valuable. But I do want to acknowledge that having Hypersmooth on was a mistake, and I want to apologize for that. So let's give this guy what for. My first impression on the throttle is it feels a little heavy. Joshua from the future here. It's not heavy. It weighs about 700 grams. I always intentionally try to fly these things with as few preconceived notions as possible so you get my honest first impression. And in this case, I think what happened is that the props that it comes with are the Ethics. I think they're S5 props. They're not super aggressive props. And so it was feeling underpowered compared to the 51477 props that I usually fly. I have up on my channel right now a hardcore freestyle rip, I think one of my best ever, that I flew with this quad and the 51477 JB Gemfan props. I'll put a link to that in the video description, and you can check it out after the end of the video if you really want to see me go hard with this. It just doesn't have that poppiness of a lighter quad. I'll put the all-up weight, the actual weight as flown, on screen. It's got a 1000 milliamp hour 6S and a Hero 8, so it is definitely not in the lightest possible trim. Hero 8 is, if you put a session on it, you could save some weight. Let's do a full throttle punch while we are mostly a full pack. It definitely gets up, yikes. But you can see it sagged down to 3.5 volts there pretty quickly. The props that Diatone sends with it are Ethics S5. So they're the higher pitched Ethics props, but at the same time, they're not like ultra high pitched props like a 5147 or something. That's not ultra. I guess that's kind of ultra these days. Despite the fact that it feels a little heavy, I do like how it flies. Like, it doesn't have that ultra lightweight changing directions like a lighter quad, like in the 700-ish gram range, or lighter would have, but it's got a really nice freestyle feel. I don't know how much that has to do with Diatone's tune. It is not on the stock PIDs, so they have tuned it. It's got a really nice smooth, oh, let's not hit those lines, power lines. It's got a real nice smooth, controlled feel. Oh, and also, you can just crash it right into a frickin' board, okay? Let me clean my lens here. Can I just say, this is why I freaking hate this style of mount. I understand why they do it, because the Hero 8 is where a lot of people are going, and it's already heavy enough without putting another 3D printed mount on here. But like every time you hit something, it just moves. It's okay for Cinewhoops. It's terrible for freestyle quads. I hate it. And I don't know what to, I mean, I don't blame Diatone for including it. And obviously you could 3D print something yourself, but it's not right for freestyle quads. It's not. It's got a really nice, smooth feel. It's like what people like about heavier freestyle quads, which is not that they're poppy and ultra responsive, but that they are smooth and controllable. And for freestyle, maybe you don't want to be like a freaking weasel on crack. Oh, see, now my angle has changed, hasn't it? Maybe you want to be just kind of cool lines. and this feels really good when doing those lines. The, oh geez, oh geez, oh geez, oh geez, oh geez. Okay, cool. The, it has reasonably low prop wash when doing big moves like that. See, really nice. See, it doesn't feel great through the slalom there. Maybe it would feel better if I didn't have a Hero 8, if I had like a session and was 50 grams lighter, it would feel better. But it feels good. The camera is not bad. It's not bad. It's a Runcam. I'm not sure exactly which Runcam it is. Is it the Phoenix? It has a look a little bit like a Phoenix. It's not an ultra contrasty look that some people would like, but I like this kind of lower contrast, higher dynamic range look. It's not like struggling in the sun when the sun's in view. I'm having no trouble seeing as many details as analog can give me. Yeah. Get a couple more packs in here and then we'll take it inside and let's take a look at it on the bench. And actually, I've got the top off it right now because I am installing a new receiver. That FreeSky Archer receiver that I was using had terrible range. The Archer M, don't buy it. Hopefully the Archer RS is better. That's not what this video is about. I actually just got finished putting TBS Tracer in here. Review of TBS Tracer, range test, coming soon on my channel. Hit the subscription button and hit the notification bell. They're right down there. You know you don't want to miss that. Moving on. Diatone has always impressed me with the feature set and design of their flight controllers and their prices. Right now, you can get a Diatone flight controller and ESC, I think it's a 40 amp ESC, for like $45. This one is not bargain basement though. It is an F7 processor, and that means that there are tons of UARTs to use for all kinds of different peripherals. The UARTs are completely interchangeable. It's not like on F4 processors where like one UART might be just for S-Bus, but if you're not using a FreeSky receiver, then it's just wasted. You have a total of 6 UARTs to do almost everything you want. One of these UARTs, though, is predefined and locked out, but for a very good reason. You see this little squiggle right here? That's a Bluetooth antenna. This flight controller has Bluetooth built in, and that means that you can use the SpeedyBee app on your smartphone. Just search for it on your app store, SpeedyBee, and you can configure it just like you're using Betaflight Configurator on your laptop. This is fantastic if you're at the field and you don't have a laptop with you, because who brings a laptop to the field? Or if you're one of those folks out there who is trying to configure your flight controller without a laptop, then this is going to really help you out. I do need to say, this chip right here is the gyro. This gyro comes with a cover on top of it to help protect the gyro from, like, if you like mount your receiver on top of the flight controller, from it getting like whacked and bumped, and that's a really good step. And I did mount my receiver on top of this gyro, and then when I pulled the receiver off to put Tracer on instead, it ripped that cover right off, and that's not Diatone's fault, that's my fault. So yeah, just wanted to get that out of the way. Here's another really cool thing Diatone has done, and they're doing this on all their flight controllers, not just this one, but it's so cool, I want to make sure I call it out. Right here, they have a troubleshooting LED for all of the major functions on the flight controller, verifying that the flight controller has VCC, that's VBAT, the 3.3 volt regulator is working, the 5 volt regulator is working, the 9 volt regulator is working, and verifying that the MCU, that's the processor, and the gyro are getting power. This is such a small thing, but such a useful thing. You ever had a situation where your video transmitter won't power up or your receiver won't power up and you're like, what's going on? And then you got to pull your multimeter out and test, and it's such a hassle. These LEDs are going to save so many people so much trouble after you crash or bash the crap out of your flight controller and then something isn't working and you don't know why. Hopefully, you'll never need them, because hopefully your flight controller will never break. But if it does break, it can remove a lot of the mystery about, well, is my flight controller damaged or not? Kudos to Diatone, and I fully expect that a whole lot of other manufacturers of flight controllers will be stealing this idea. In fact, I literally had a conversation the other day about putting indicators on my flight controller to show that the regulators are working. Thanks, Diatone. What could I complain about? The bootloader button. Bootloader button is not a large hard button. It's the little film style button, which is a little more subject to damage, and it is not easily accessible from the outside of the board. You have to, it's going to be pretty hard to push this button without taking the top plate off. Hopefully you don't need the bootloader button, because Betaflight and Windows drivers have gotten better than before, but if you ever do have to push it, it'll be a little bit of a pain in the butt. The camera is the Runcam Phoenix, and of course I love the Runcam Phoenix so much I made my own version of it, the Runcam Phoenix V2 JB edition. I tweaked the settings, and in fact, if you have this camera and you want to try out my settings, I'll put a link in the video description to my review of my camera. It's just a Runcam Phoenix, but with my settings on it, and you can just copy them. My version also has digital camera control, so you could wire the camera up to a UART on the flight controller and remote control the camera settings using your controller. This is the standard Runcam Phoenix, and it doesn't have that feature, and camera control is not wired up. That's pretty standard for these ready-to-flies, though. Not a lot of people use that feature. It would be a bonus if it had it, but it's no big deal that it doesn't. It's awesome that Diatone has installed a capacitor back here. This should really be standard on all quadcopters, especially 6S quadcopters. And it may be a little hard for you to see, but these legs have been covered in clear plastic. They are not naked legs. Naked legs, how suggestive. Yeah, a lot of people will leave these legs naked, and it's just an invitation for it to short circuit against something and spark and create a damage. It would be nice if this capacitor was secured in some way. Over time, so many crashes, it vibrates, and eventually one of these legs will crack off and maybe create a problem. My typical way of doing that is to zip tie it to the XT60 lead, and then they've secured the XT60 lead here. This is a great touch, and this isn't even a 3D printed part. This is like an injection molded part, so they've put some amount of money into tooling for these little parts. They've secured the XT60 lead here, a great way to keep it from getting grabbed or whatever. I would typically just use a zip tie, but it's nice that Diatone has given us this part. And I don't even know if it would be possible, based on the routing of this XT60 lead, to like secure the capacitor in any meaningful way without also stressing it. So I'm not going to worry about that, and it's probably not going to be a big deal for most people, but it is a little touch that I always like to call out. Now, in case you haven't figured it out yet, this is the analog version of the Roma that I am reviewing, and the video transmitter on it, it's pretty good. I really like that it has very clear indicators, easy to read, the band and channel, and output power here. I do wish that the output power was higher. It's only 400 milliwatt output power, which is enough for most of what you're going to want to do, but 600 or 800 would be better, like noticeably better. So it's unfortunate. It's 20 millimeter form factor, which is nice, but like, for example, Rush has the Rush Tank Ultimate Mini, which goes to 800 milliwatts in a 20 millimeter form factor. So I know it can be done. Good enough, but if there was a little bit of a deficit on this quad, that might be one of the things I would complain about. I also really love some of the accessories that Diatone provides. This clear frosted plastic piece here, Diatone didn't install that on top of the VTX. They provided it in the box, and I actually added it because it means you can mount your receiver on top of the VTX without actually literally sticking your receiver to the VTX itself. I often stick the receiver to the VTX, and usually doesn't have any downsides, but it's a really nice touch. They also give you this plastic piece for the flight controller if you wanted to like mount your receiver on top of the flight controller without ripping off this piece that covers the gyro, which probably I should have done. But the screws that come on with it weren't long enough to mount this, at least not, so I didn't want to yank out and replace the screws. The motors are Diatone Mamba 2207.5. These are 1700 kV for 6S batteries, and they come in a 4S version. I don't know the kV off the top of my head, probably like 2500 kV. They are really nice for, like, this is not like a super premium price quad, so it has a lot of value for the price. And these motors, I can't tell if this is a single piece bell where the top and the sidewall are machined all at once out of a single piece of metal, or whether this is a two-piece bell where the top and the side are separate and they just, like, maybe they're hiding the seam. I don't see any seam there, It sure looks like it's a single piece bell to me. And that is really surprising on a quadcopter of this price point. That's really expensive to do compared to the alternative. The machining on the top is super nice. Lots of spokes here. Plenty of spokes to hopefully keep the durability of the motor high in a hit. The two-color machining, just a really premium feeling motor. The shaft is hollow to save weight. Very nice touch. Like, Diatone has really outdone themselves with these motors. You could easily sell these as like say a $22 motor, and to find them on a quadcopter of this price point is pretty freaking impressive. As far as the frame goes, you can also see where Diatone is going out of their way to try to provide more value for your dollar. These are not 3D printed. They are injection molded. That's going to be a pro and a con. If they were 3D printed, then you could just print your own at home. But one of the problems I've had with the 3D printed versions is, especially when they're made of TPU, they tend to just kind of rip out. Whereas these hard plastic ones are going to probably, I think they're going to last longer, and they're going to not have the screws ripping out and coming loose. It also comes with both white and black plastic accessories, so if you're flexible about the color, you even have a set of spares. Speaking of the plastic accessories, it also comes with side plates, which can be used to help protect the USB port and the flight control stack from dirt. I didn't run them on mine, but it's a nice touch. Now let's look at what we got going on up top. So we'll put the top plate back on. I have installed the battery pads. It comes with nice grippy battery pads that are custom fit. And the top plate has cutouts for 1 and 2 battery straps. You know, I always like to run 2 battery straps. The cutouts are spaced pretty nicely for the kind of batteries I'm using. Sometimes frames will have the battery strap cutouts like too far apart, and a stubbier battery won't be able to get underneath both of them. I found this to work pretty well. I'm running like 1100 milliamp hour 6S's. On the back side, we've got a 3D printed holder for the antenna, and I love that it uses this 2-screw style of SMA connector, the TBS style of pigtail. This I find to be much more secure than the kind that uses a single lock nut to hold it in place. And you can also see how I've kind of sort of retrofitted my TBS tracer antennas here. This was made for Crossfire or for a standard 2.4 gig antenna to come out of an antenna tube here, and you get it done. Looking up front, the front end is metal, so it should hold up really well in a crash, and they do have some plastic bumpers here, maybe to actually, I mean, they look nice and they add a little bit of accent color, but functionally I don't think they're going to make much difference. Not much that you're going to do is going to mess with this metal, so if you wanted to save like a gram, you might take those off. The camera is well protected, and it can be moved front and back and rotated in place. So you've got some flexibility here if you were to use this frame with a different camera. So that brings us to the end of the video, and as always, the question, should you buy it? And in order to help us answer that question, I have brought in what has until now been my go-to for a extremely high value for money bind and fly quad. This is the iFlight Cidora SL5-e, and it's basically identical to the iFlight Nazgul V2. They just have a slightly different frame. I even think the electronics are the same. This guy costs about 200 bucks. 189, 200, depending on just what day of the week it is. The Diatone comes in about $10 cheaper. So they are almost exactly at price parity. What about weight? And in order to do that, I'm going to get my scale out, although I should say it's not quite a fair comparison. I do have the GoPro mount on the Cidora, and it's missing one of its arm pieces. The Cidora nominally weighs 400 grams dry without battery. So let's just double check. 410 grams. Okay, so it's right around 400 grams without this GoPro mount on it. And the Diatone lists at 330 grams. I cannot believe that this is going to be 70 grams lighter than this guy. Okay, I didn't think so. 360 grams. Like, how are they coming up with a weight of 330 grams for their I don't know, maybe it's without the plastic pieces. Okay, I've got this guy on there, that's another 2 or 3 grams, but I just don't understand how they could list that at 330 grams, 350, 360 grams. Still, it is lighter. It is lighter. I gotta say, I think the Diatone is just spanking the iFlight Cidora in almost every way. The frame has just a more sort of refined feel. It's got nice touches like this extra milling, and I know that's purely cosmetic, but it really feels like a nice premium frame. It's lighter. Some of that lightness probably comes down to the frame. You can just see it's just got a little bit more material removed. Got a metal front end for durability. The camera, I think, is going to be a toss-up. I obviously prefer the JB Phoenix. I think they got our Caddx Ratel on the Cidora. Some people, obviously the Ratel is a very good camera. Call that a 50-50. Flight controller, the Diatone wins. It's an F7 versus an F4, and it's got Bluetooth built in. ESC, who knows? The only place where I think the Diatone really loses is the video transmitter. 400 milliwatts on the video transmitter versus, I believe, 800 milliwatts, if my memory... It's definitely like way more, 700 or 800 milliwatts on the Cidora and the Nazgul. That is a winner. Of course, that only matters if you're using analog. If you're using DJI, then, yeah. So, I think the Diatone has got a real winner here. And I may even be switching to recommending the Diatone instead of the Cidora, for people who are just like looking to get a $200 bind and fly that's pretty good quality. Comes with these plastic pieces. A few people have reported that the Diatone breaks arms too easily. I've beat the crap out of the Cidora and I have broken an arm on it, but I mean, arms break, right? It doesn't look like the arms on the Diatone are any real spindlier or different than the arms on the Cidora. So you want a thicker armed frame that's going to break way more durable. You're just looking at something completely different. Diatone, very good job. I asked at the beginning of this video, Diatone makes good products on paper, but then sometimes they have like a fatal flaw that means that I can't recommend them. Nope, not this time. This is incredibly, incredibly good value for money. And if that's where Diatone wants to position themselves in the market, putting out good product at ridiculous price and leaves you wondering, where did you find that value? I have more power to them. Diatone, give me 600 or 800 milliwatts on the VTX and don't crank the price up too much, and then there'll just be no hesitation. This is a really good quadcopter. If you agree, there's a link in the video description where you can click that link and buy it, and it's an affiliate link. And that means I get a small commission every time you click the link and make any purchase. Any purchase, you just click the link before you shop, fill up your shopping cart, check out, I get a small commission. It's an easy way for you to help support me. It doesn't cost you anything. Thanks for watching. Thanks to Diatone for making this, and happy flying. What are you doing in here? The least you could do is subscribe or join my Patreon, or like just here's another video I picked out for you. Jeez.